Good afternoon, and welcome to Digital Transformation Thursdays. Our topic this week is electronic signatures. Are they legal? So we will be discussing the different legal aspects of electronic signatures, and we will discuss the different technologies, more popular electronic signature technologies that are currently in use. And we will have as our guests people from the ICT, Cheryl Vizcarra and Jennifer Canlas from the Department of ICT, who are running the Philippine National PKI, or Public Key Infrastructure program with the ICT that is offering free digital certificates, and also from a Philippine provider using Philippine technology, Jeffrey Reyes of Tuala. Actually, I thought initially it was pronounced Tiwala. Apparently, it's Tuala. So that's our show for today. I've got far too many slides, I think, to share with you. So I think I'll just jump right in. Hold on, let me get to my presentation. I'll start with. Okay. All right. So electronic signatures. So we'll start off where we were before, and hold on. Anyway, so the hold on. All right. Okay. So what we'll discuss is the e-commerce app, legal recognition of electronic signatures, and then we'll go into some examples of electronic signature technologies. And then if we have some time, we'll jump into electronic evidence or the rules on electronic evidence on electronic signatures. As I mentioned last week, the definition of electronic signatures in the e-commerce app is very broad. And as I mentioned also, the e-commerce app was designed to give legal recognition to electronic signatures, such that the electronic signatures that satisfy the e-commerce app will be considered the same as handwritten signatures. So if that electronic signature is related, right, or connected to an electronic document, then that electronic document will be considered signed under the law. It is the same as a paper document that has that is manually signed, or what they say contains a wet signature. And therefore, if the law requires that something has to be signed, for example, for a promissory note to be negotiable, it must be signed. Then, if it bears that in that electronic promissory note, if it bears that valid electronic signature, then it is that electronic promissory note could become negotiable under the negotiable instruments law. Unfortunately, as I mentioned also, it is a very narrow subset of signatures that are considered the same as handwritten signatures, because they have to comply with, this is section 8 of the e-commerce app. And it has many requirements, as you can see. First, there is a procedure, and it cannot be alterable by the parties interested in the electronic document. And then there's a method to identify the party and to indicate that party's access to the document. Second, there is the method is reliable and appropriate. And third, it is necessary for the party to be sought to be bound in order to proceed further with the transaction to have executed or provided the electronic signature. And finally, there must be an ability on the part of the other party to verify, right? He's authorized and enabled to verify the electronic signature and to make a decision to proceed with the transaction authenticated by the same. So this is a lot of requirements. You have to tick all the boxes before you can say that the document is signed. And that's a little scary initially, because it does appear that only a very narrow subset of signatures will be considered valid under the law. And that's true. However, when you look at I don't know if I have it here. Yeah. When you look at the law itself, there are only actually a very, very few instances where something has to be signed, or a document has to be signed in order for it to be valid. Because we follow what's known as, or Philippine law follows what's known as the spiritual system, contracts are valid in whatever form you may find. And therefore, a verbal contract, an oral contract, is as enforceable as a written contract. and only in a few instances where a signature is required, and only in those instances will you need to have an electronic signature that satisfies Section 8. And these are the instances some of the instances that I've brought here on this slide that you're looking at right now. So negotiable instruments. I mean, even then, if a negotiable instrument is unsigned, it's still a promissory note. It's just that it's not negotiable. So for you lawyers out there, you can appreciate the difference. So in other words, you just don't avail of the benefits of the negotiable instruments law. But the promissory note by itself will be considered a written document of what the parties agree to, or it could be looked at as a written proof of the existence of the loan. Okay, so I'll now discuss the different ways that you can sign. So one of the ways that I am aware of is using the technology of Apple, right? And also on Apple Preview, you could actually sign. So I have an example here. This is something that was sent to me a few days ago. This is an application for an ID card, the Philippine Judicial Academy. And as you can see, this is sent to me as a PDF document. It's a scan of the document. And what you do here is you click on, I don't know if you can see the mouse, that part there. And when you click, it shows you the different options of the signature. And what you can do is when you choose the signature you want, that's not my signature, but so you can affix it. You can see that it's now the signature is already there. And the other thing you can do is you can choose a color so that it looks legitimate. And then in this case, normally I choose the color blue. And so now what you have there is a signature. The document now looks like it's signed. The question now is this a valid electronic signature? Is this document now considered signed? And the answer is no, right? Because these requirements are not present, right? First of all, I mean just very clearly, right? The other party is not authorized or enabled to verify the authenticity of that signature, right? There's no way for them to do that, and therefore it fails. Now, does it satisfy an electronic signature under the E-commerce Act? Yes, it's just not considered a valid electronic signature. Okay. Now let's go to Adobe. So Adobe, I captured this from their site, so I hope I don't get sued for
JJ,
copyright
sorry to cut
infringement.
you, but we can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen.
No.
Oh wait. Oh, no wonder. Somebody paused the screen. Sorry. There. Sorry. Maybe I know. So you lost everything. Sorry. Let me go back. Thank you for that. Oh, ano, bakit na ano doon? So I'll just show you. So in Apple, no? In Apple, you can if you open a PDF, you can sign on your PDF using maybe I should open my Viber on my screen so people can message me in case something's going crazy. Okay. Right now, so this is a PDF. You're seeing a PDF. It's sent to me. I can sign it. The place where I'm supposed to put my signature is down here, right? Now, so what you can do is you can click here, this part, and then what it does is it opens there. It opens up the choice of signatures. You can create a signature by if you have an iPad or even on the computer, you can sign using your hand or even on your phone, right? And then it saves it as a signature. Another way to do it is you sign on a piece of paper, put your signature on a piece of paper, you put it against the camera, and then it will scan it reverse, and then they'll put it in the proper place. So actually one of these signatures here, many of these signatures are actually signed manually, right? And then you press that, and then it affixes the signature here, right? You see that? And I can change the color also. So normally I do that so that people think that I actually signed it, even though I did not. And then so that you send this off now. The nice thing about this, and I'm a big user of this, is that you can be anywhere. You could be, because this also works on the iPhone. If somebody sends you an email with a PDF, you can open it on preview and you can have the same functionality on your iPhone, and therefore you can sign documents this way. But as I mentioned earlier, this does not satisfy. This is not a valid electronic signature. That document is still considered unsigned. Okay. There is you can argue that there's good reason to believe that it came from me if it is bound that way. How come? Because the only person who could have affixed that signature using this process is somebody who was able to open my phone or open my computer. And presumably, I'm the only one who can do that. So under those circumstances, you could argue that it's reliable, to a certain degree. But the problem is that you don't satisfy the requirements of the law, particularly the ability of the other party to enable to verify the signature. Okay, so now we go to Adobe. So in Adobe, so I just captured this from the let me just move this out here. Okay, I just captured this from the web earlier. So the first thing you do is you enter the signer's email, okay, and then enter that. Then you add a customized message if you want. You select the document that you want to send, and then you send it. Then it's received by the person who's supposed to sign. He presses start. He enters his initials there. I entered my initial. And then you click tap to enter your signature. I entered my name. Click to finish, and the document now is considered signed, and the document is sent. And then you get access in some sort of like dashboard, right? It shows you the status of documents that are being signed by other people. And then later, of course, if it's signed, it gives you information about that the signature, the document has been signed by the individual. And if you click, you get more information, more details. This is the document that was signed. This is the person who created it. And it shows information about the signing. So I captured that. So it says that, it was created at this time. It was emailed to this individual. That individual saw it, right? In other words, that individual saw it on the web, on Adobe's website. Adobe captured this IP address, right? And then he e-signed using the Adobe system. And then the final document was emailed by the Adobe system to these two people, right? The question, of course, is that it satisfy Section 8. Now, maybe I don't know enough about Adobe, and actually we had tried to invite a representative from Adobe. Maybe somebody will come in later. I don't know. Maybe they can tell us on the Q&A that they're around. But so there is a method to identify the party, and that method essentially is basically email, right? Because they do send to your email address, and it indicates your access to the document. The method, you can argue whether it's reliable and appropriate, and that could be a function of what type of transaction you're entering into. And it is necessary for the party to continue to provide the signature, so he's required to provide it. But the thing that is again not clear is whether the other party, that information that I showed you earlier, this information is available to both parties. Now, it does say that the signed document is emailed to both parties, but whether each party has the ability individually to get verification as to the authenticity of the signature is not clear to me based on the demo. But of course, the demo is just that, a demo. Okay, which brings us to Docusign. Now, Docusign is a very similar process flow as Adobe. You identify the document, right? You indicate your signature. In this case, there you click on sign, and then the nice thing about Docusign is they allow you to have your own select style, or you can draw your signature. So it's up to you, and you adapt it. Now, if you look at the definition of an electronic signature, right, it's a mark that you adapt in order to identify yourself and to indicate your consent. So in this particular case, you've adopted this mark, right? And so that is the mark that you've adopted. You click that, and then the signature is affixed on the bottom part of the document. Okay, so you see it there. And then you are able now to see the history, right? The details about that document, when it was created, that it was emailed, the same information. It was sent, it was delivered, and it was signed, right, on this date, that time, and that's the IP address. I'm not wondering if that's really my IP address. Maybe I should have obscured that. Okay, so that's the IP address supposedly of me, and then there's more information, the certificate that's issued by Docusign. Okay, giving all sorts of information. Okay, and the question now is this legal, lawful signature? Certainly, there's a method to identify both parties, right? Initially, the method to identify the first party is the user ID password that is able to access the Docusign system. The second method to identify the other signers is through their email address. And the way they can access that is, of course, obviously, you would have access to your email if you have your user name password combo in order to sign the document. Whether it's reliable and appropriate, again, there's some analysis that needs to be done depending on the type of documentation and type of transaction you're entering into. Okay, the necessary for the parties ought to be bound to provide the signature. So that's kicked off. Again, the last part is, are you authorized and enabled to verify the signature independently of each other? And again, that depends on whether or not the information, all of this information is available to all signers of the document. It appears that it is, right? So it would satisfy that. So there's reason to believe that, because the reason I was able to have access to this info was because Docusign sent me an email, and then it provided me a link to this information. Now, whether this information is available to me moving forward is something that, well, I'm not particularly, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'll move on to the next part of my presentation, and my next set of slides involves I don't know, digital signature. So we'll jump to digital signature. And let me see. Okay. So digital signatures. Moving on. So I mentioned this already, right? That digital signatures are electronic signatures are broadly authorized and recognized in the broadly defined, but limited in recognition. So a lot are considered, and but only a few are deemed valid. Now, the reason I discuss digital signatures is because as early as 2000, it was my conclusion that only digital signatures within the context of what's known as the public key infrastructure are considered valid signatures. So now I'm going to try to explain to you, and I hope I will be successful in explaining to you what is a digital signature. Okay, I have to move through a couple of slides. I'd like to give credit, by the way. These slides were stolen from. You can see it again. Did it pause? It paused na naman. Why does it pause? Zoom share. Thank you for pointing that out. Why does that happen? So these slides were quote unquote stolen from Abet de la Cruz. So you'll see his name here. So anyway, 20 years worth of theft you're watching right now. So let's hope Abet doesn't sue us. Okay, so the first concept, of course, that we need to understand is encryption. Very simple, right? You take plain text, you apply an electronic key, and then you end up with ciphertext. So that's encryption. Right? You encrypt. That's easy to understand. The next now is the concept of decryption. And in decryption, you take ciphertext, and then you use the electronic key, the same electronic key, and then you decrypt it. So now you are able to encrypt and decrypt, but you use the same key. Okay, and so this is known as symmetric key cryptography. So let's say I wanted to send a message to you and I want it encrypted, because any message that goes through the internet is what's the word? Is open, and anybody can see. Anybody in the path of the message can access the message. That's why they say that internet email, in terms of security, is actually equivalent to the security of a postcard. Okay, so I will encrypt it. I'll encrypt it using this key. I send it on the internet. You receive it, and then using the same key, you can decrypt it now. Okay, this is called single key cryptography. The problem with single key cryptography is that if you want to communicate with many people, you have to send a unique key to each of them. So if Abet is communicating with me and Reina and Roger and Janet and Billy and Gloria, Abet has to send a key to each of us. Okay, so it's messy. You have to have so many keys. If you have well, the average Filipino has I think 1,000 Facebook friends. That's 1,000 keys you have to send to 1,000 people. How do you transmit this key safely, right? Unless you meet face to face, you put it on a USB drive. Hope it doesn't. So you can't send it by email. So it's very, very difficult. So symmetric key cryptography works, but it's difficult. Plus, you're also considering that the other party is able to secure that key on their own. Okay, what if so that's the problem. And so the solution is what they call asymmetric key cryptography or public key cryptography. In public key cryptography, I'm sorry, you are assigned what's known as a key pair. Okay, a private key and a public key. The private key you keep privately, you hold that. The public key is known to everyone. Okay, I'll unahan ko na kayo. If you're aware of Bitcoin, right, and the Bitcoin address is a public key, right? And if you want to transact using Bitcoin, you want to move Bitcoin, the instruction to the blockchain must be signed with the private key. And in a private key, those are the keys that are in your wallet. That's why if your wallet is compromised, right, you can sign instructions and the blockchain will know that it's signed properly because it relates it to the public key. Okay? So I'll go back to that later if you have any questions. Okay, so the public key is posted and is accessible from a public directory. The private key is held in secret. So that means that there could be, right, a minimum of only one key for me, one key, and then everybody, and I can use it and communicate with many people. Okay, what is encrypted with one key can be decrypted with the other key. So what I encrypt with my private key can be decrypted using the public key. Okay, and one is useless without the other. So they're a key pair, right? And this is actually, this definition has been adopted in the rules on electronic evidence. So how do you use it? No, so let's say Abet uses my public key. So then because my public key is publicly available, he then sends me a message. He encrypts it using my public key. So the message is now ciphertext, right? You see that? Sent to the internet, I receive it. Using my private key, I decrypt it. Now, what does this mean? It means that this ensures privacy, right? Because the only key that can decrypt that message is my private key. So Abet can be sure when he encrypts using my public key that I'm the only one who can read that message. Okay? So how about if Abet uses his private key? Okay? So he has a message. Abet uses his private key, which only he has. He encrypts it, sends it on the internet. I receive ciphertext. And then, of course, it will say, oh, this message came from Abet. Okay. Then I check Abet's public key, which is publicly available. I decrypt the message. If it decrypts properly, I know that the message could only have come from Abet because I was able to decrypt it using his public key. Because the only key that could have been used to encrypt it was Abet's private key. Okay. I hope that's clear as the Pasig River. Okay. So we know that Abet is the only one who possesses the private key, and therefore he's the only one who could have encrypted the message. Okay, and then his authorship is also established by the fact that the key was decrypted. Na decrypt natin yung message using his public key. Okay, all right. So the digital. Okay, so now we'll move on. So now you understand public key, the key pair, right? Now we talk about something different. Okay, so you start from scratch. So we're going to discuss what is a hash. Okay, a hash is a digital fingerprint of an electronic document. I like to think of it as a number. Okay, so in other words, you have an entire message or an entire document. You run it through a hash function, and you come up with this hash. It's a summary of what this document is. Hash functions are standard. Okay, so there are hash functions out there. I don't know. I'm sure one of our guests or later will be able to tell us what are the different hash functions that are available. They're all standard. The message, this thing here, you cannot take this and get the original message. So even if I have the hash of this message, I'll never be able, mathematically impossible, or I guess improbable, for me to decrypt, to find out what the message is. Okay, but the value of a hash is that if I send you a message and I run it through a hash, so I send you the message and the hash function, right? When you receive it, okay, so you get my message, you run it through the same hash function, which everybody has access to these standard hash functions. And then you can compare the hash that I sent to you to the hash that you created. And if it's the same, then you know that that the message was not changed. It had not changed because the hash function changes if there is any, meaning the hash result, right, is different if there is anything that's been changed here. So for example, this message is hello world. Let's say I add a space after hello, right? Now, for human beings, there's no difference. For computers, there's a difference. And therefore, the hash function that will come out without the space is different from the one that will come out with the space. And so that's what I mean. When you're able to compare hashes, then you know that the file is exactly the same. Okay, so this is actually used. I don't know if you've heard of the technology called deduplication. To find out that both files are exactly the same, you run a hash function, even if the file names are different. But if the hash result is the same, the files are identical. And so what do? You delete the other file, save on hard drive space, and just make a pointer to that file to the other file. That way you can save in hard drives. Okay, now, what is a digital signature? A digital signature, so you take the original message, you run it through a hash, you come up with a hash. You encrypt the hash with your private key. The encrypted hash is your digital signature. One more time. You have the original message, the message that you want to send, the document, for example, right? The say non-disclosure agreement. You run it through a hash function. So you come up with a hash. You encrypt this hash using your private key, which only you have, right? Then, so that hash now will be encrypted. This encrypted hash is your digital signature. Now, how do you do that? You send the message, the original message, or the original document together with the signed, the encrypted hash, which is your digital signature. So now this is the document, and these two documents are related to each other. You send it on the internet, it's received. So the recipient will do this. He will take the original message, run it through the hash function, then he'll have the hash, right? Makukuha niya yung hash. Now, he takes the digital signature. Now, he knows it came from you, or at least that's what the email says. He will then look up your public key, and then he will decrypt the hash or the digital signature using that key. He will come up with a hash, which is the decrypted, right, from this, because you can decrypt it using the public key. Now, you compare both hashes, the hash that you ran through the hash function and the hash that you decrypted. If it's the same, then you verified it. You've established two things. Let me see, I haven't used these slides in a long time. First, you've established identity. How did you establish identity? By the fact that you decrypted the hash using the public key of the sender. In other words, the only one with the private key which encrypted this message is the sender. So you've established his identity, okay, that this message came from the holder of the private key. Now, in the case of now, what did the hash function establish? The hash function established that the message did not change. The message did not change from the time it was sent to the time it was verified. Meaning this message was the one that created that hash. This hash pala, right? It's the same. So now you know that the message has not changed. The integrity of the document has been established, and the identity of the signer has been established as well. Okay, right. So I'm going back and forth on that. All right. So now it's so people who sell digital signature systems will call it non-repudiation, right? Okay. Now the only problem is, in Bitcoin, I said about earlier. Maybe I don't know if we can do that for So if this is a Bitcoin, so let's say, as I said, a Bitcoin address is a public key, right? Meaning when you send an instruction, right, your wallet contains the private key. Okay, so you use that by entering your password, right? So what happens is you send a message to the blockchain, and then you take a hash and the message is formatted. It says transfer 3 Bitcoins to this person. And so let's say I have 8 Bitcoins in my wallet. I transfer 3 Bitcoins to them, and then transfer the 5 Bitcoins, the remainder, to me. Okay. So that message you will run it through a hash, and then you will sign it using the key that's in your wallet, right? The blockchain will receive it. The blockchain will receive your message. It will decrypt it using the because you signed it, because it knows that it's sent to the public key. No? So gagawin niya, i-decrypt, the blockchain will decrypt the signature using the Bitcoin address, which is the public key, come up with a hash. The hash is also the original message. The Bitcoin instruction is run through a hash function, and then they'll come up with a hash. And if they match, then the instruction is valid. Okay, so this is the way a blockchain works, at least my understanding. Okay, so technical people out there, if you're squirming in your seats, I'm sorry. Okay, so but you and I know, everybody knows, in Bitcoin, you don't know who owns a Bitcoin address. There's anonymity, and that's the same thing in digital signature. In the system that I've described up to this point, nobody knows who really owns that private key, or right, like who really owns, or really whose Bitcoin address is that. Okay, same thing. So the problem is identity. So what's the solution? Okay, one solution is for a third party to certify that that public key belongs to this individual. Okay, and that party is referred to as a certification authority. Okay, certification authority, and that certification authority, it's exactly like KYC. They will verify your identity, challenge you to establish your identity. On that basis, they will then say, okay, this public key is owned by this individual, and the certificate authority will itself issue a certificate, right? They will certify that that person owns that public key. Okay, and they issue digital certificates. And digital certificates will contain the name and address of the certificate authority, and it will certify that the certificate is valid for a certain time period. This is exactly what is being done by the PNPKI, or the Philippine National Public Key Infrastructure, by the DICT. They will verify your identity, and then they will issue a certificate saying that key, right, belongs to JJ Disini, because JJ Disini went to us and gave us his identification. Okay, so it's a bit like a credit card, right? Sorry, in terms of the information, validity period, the public key would be your address. The issuer is, like in this case it's Visa, but actually in a certificate it would be, say, the DICT. Okay, right. So just to give you a sense of the way we structure the rules on electronic evidence, we made it very simple to prove a digital signature. So if it's a digital signature, right, as we discussed, the way to prove it or authenticate it so that the document is considered signed is you need to show to the court, demonstrate to the court that there is a method used to show the existence of a digital signature, and second, there is a method to verify it. Okay, so anong year to? July 18, 2001, right? Abet de la Cruz sent me an email, right? And this was the Outlook. I don't know if it still does it now, but you see that if that is present, that means that the email is digitally signed. You click on that, and then, so sorry, going back lang. This is the method to identify that the email is digitally signed. When you click on it, this is the method to validate it. So it says that the digital signature is valid. But when you look more closely into the details of the digital signature, what you will see is that persona is not validated. Okay, which means that although they were able to verify that this person says, right, that this ID is issued to this person, the one issuing the digital certificate, in this case it's VeriSign, they said we did not verify the identity of this person. So in a sense, this is cannot be considered valid. Okay, it's VeriSign that issued the certificate, but they don't know really who he is. Okay, let me just skip these slides. And I'll just move on to something that a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago you saw. Professor Emer Bañez, used Docusign to sign the list of people who passed the law aptitude exam. And so if you open that document on what do you call this, on Acrobat, okay, what you will see is here, you see that it says signed and all signatures are valid. So you click on signature panel and this opens up. I don't know if you can read that, but I think I made it bigger. There, okay. It says the signatures are valid, validated, signed by Docusign, signatures by. So now you're saying, wait, so this document, which was signed by Professor Bañez, it's digitally signed. But when you look more closely, right, what you will find is that this document is not digitally signed by Professor Bañez. Professor Bañez used Docusign to sign it, but the digital signature actually belongs to Docusign. It says here, right, this document. So in other words, the document that was signed using by Docusign, that document itself, Docusign then signed it digitally. Okay, so there's the what they call it, an envelope. The Docusign envelope created when Professor Bañez affixed his signature, that itself was digitally signed by Docusign. Okay, so this is a document which is so now interesting, right? Under Philippine law, you will say, well, this document is considered signed by Docusign. The document arguably might not have been signed by Emer Bañez, because we know for a fact it was not digitally signed by Emer Bañez. And when you look at when you go deeper into the certificate, when you click here for the signature details, to look at this digital certificate, what you will see again, as it says, it's Docusign that is to whom Entrust, right, had issued the certificate. Okay, and I hope that was clear. So what I'm going to do now, so that ends my part on digital signature.